Hello and welcome to Midweek Matters. Not a day passes without hearing of the news of someone known, some relative, a friend, someone close, someone in the neighborhood, or someone you admired from a distance passing away, succumbing to COVID 19. Psychologically, what does it mean to the families who lost their dear ones? What does it mean to the people who are infected and waging a battle for their lives? What does it mean to those who are treating them and helping them? What does it mean to the rest of us who are so far safe, but who knows, could be a prey to the deadly virus anytime, any day? Today, I want to look at the psychological and emotional impact of the pandemic. I looked up several research papers in reputed scientific journals and spoke to a number of helpline organizers. I would like to share with you what I learned from them. Numbers scream at us. Numbers of active infections, number of total infections so far, count of daily deaths, number of deaths so far since the pandemic's outbreak. When I open the newspapers, to me, every other news item seems utterly irrelevant. I know I'm wrong. Conflict in Palestine should matter. Arrest of an MP in my home state should matter. Double-digit drop in fuel and power demand. Cairn Energy's plans to seize $70 billion worth of Indian assets. Indian companies going for IPOs. Liz Cheney's ouster. Leicester winning FA Cup. The contours of renewed rivalry between Apple and Microsoft, all these also ought to matter. But to be honest with you, they don't. Only lives lost, lives under threat, lives waging battles against death. People who are helping others wage those battles, only those seem to matter. They crowd out everything else from the mind. I have become indifferent to what political leaders speak. Attacks by opposition on the government don't interest me. Government and ruling party leaders' clever defense, crafty justifications, insensitive arguments ceased to be repulsive. The Punch and Judy shows on our news television, they no longer anger me. They are now incomprehensible, as though they all speak an alien, unfamiliar, incomprehensible language. I do not know what is it called, that ugly feeling which is beyond repulsion and anger. Is there a word for it, or is it a nameless anguish? A few days ago, I heard someone say that the human tragedy unfolding in front of our eyes was because both the government and the people dropped their guard after the first phase of COVID ebbed. His words are important because he is the leader of the supposedly largest cultural organization on the planet. His words are sacrosanct to millions of socio-cultural voluntary servants throughout our land. I was dismayed by his attempt to make both the government and the people accountable in equal measure. He passed up an opportunity to give a rap on the knuckles of the government, forfeited his stature by failing to resurrect a milieu of accountability. Till then, I didn't realize that the conduct of individuals can be as much responsible for large-scale extirpation of human lives as that of the institutions trusted with our collective life. A friend reminded me that this attitude is similar to the attitude that blames the dress of a woman for her rape. Victim is no less responsible. That is the logic, perhaps. Lives lost, jobs lost, incomes lost, debts, private lenders call, banks call insistently to remind us of due dates. Landlords begin to make visits to demand rents, provisions running out, milk packets don't appear in the mornings at the doorstep anymore. Regular medicines for the elders at home are over. Children stay home. Spouses don't leave home. Everyone is irritable, frustrated, anxious, helpless, inflammatory, ready to snap at each other. Words fly, hands lift against each other for no reason except that there is no other way to vent the bottled up fury. What is this pandemic doing to individuals? What I said till now is what you and I see in our day to day lives. They're apparent in every household, every neighborhood. But do those observations miss the wood for the trees? Is it just anecdotal? What does rigorous academic research tell us? I looked up the results of some academic research studies. I have given the links to those papers in the description below. Studies were done on people during the first wave in every country almost. I narrowed my focus onto the studies either done on Indian experience by foreign academics or done in India by Indian scholars. The studies I consulted were published in credible academic and scientific research journals, peer-reviewed. It's a pity that popular news publications don't pay much attention to them. They do not make them accessible to the general reader or to the policymaker. What we have, on the other hand, is these publications romanticizing work from home, technology and apps that are changing the way we work and live, buy and sell, learn and teach, how the world is being redefined, how people are finding new ways of connecting with each other, how pandemic has brought families together emotionally, how people are able to enjoy music, catch up with reading, indulge their passions, learn new skills or languages. They gave us a continuous stream of Instagrammable stories of life during the lockdown, amidst a raging war. However, the research tells us a very different story, unveils a different reality, a monochromatic story of the gruesome pounding most of us are subjected to. Research papers tell us that COVID-19 has already led to diverse mental health problems, anxiety, depression, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other trauma and stress-related disorders. It tells us that those who have themselves suffered from serious COVID-19 illness and potential death, individuals who, as family members and healthcare workers, have witnessed others suffering and death, individuals who have learned about the death or risk of death of a family member or friend, and persons such as journalists, first responders, medical examiners, and hospital personnel who have experienced extreme exposure to aversive details are primarily the sufferers. Indian Pediatrics Journal reported that closure of schools, lack of extracurricular and outdoor activities altered children's eating and sleeping habits. Lack of peer time fostered monotony, anguish, irritation, and diverse neuropsychiatric symptoms. Sexual, psychological, and physical abuse of children has registered a significant rise. International Journal of Community Medicine and Public Health reported that 53% of their sample showed symptoms of depression, 37% of anxiety, and 24% of stress. International Journal of Social Psychiatry reported that 25% of study samples suffered from depression, 28% from anxiety, and about 12% from moderate to severe stress. Healthcare workers are the most seriously affected. Strains due to lack of personal protective equipment PPE, fears of virus exposure, burnout, patients dying despite heroic efforts to save them, and making difficult decisions about which patients should receive limited resources, all these have taken a huge toll on them. A study published in February 2021 issue of Frontiers of Psychology reported that nearly 53% of healthcare workers suffered from pandemic-related burnout. I spoke to many helplines which have been in operation for some years, as well as those that are set up after the pandemic struck. Some old ones had increased their phone lines and brought in additional counselors. I will summarize my findings from the conversations. Helplines which were in existence before the pandemic struck were handling exam stress, suicidal tendencies, domestic violence, child abuse, and such other issues. They said their call traffic has increased 10 to 15-fold after COVID struck. That's between pre-pandemic and pandemic. And between the first wave and the current surge, the traffic has nearly doubled. That is, on top of the 10 to 15-fold increase. The number of callers are preponderantly male. Women's calls are less and mostly related to domestic violence. The number of calls from frontline workers are very few or even none. The research that I mentioned earlier showed that they were severely affected. We do not know whom are they reaching out to and if they are being taken care at all. Calls from people with suicidal tendencies have grown in number significantly. Calls that talked about financial distress are increasing by the day. Callers said they were unable to sleep. Their stress levels were rising, anxiety and depression increasing. There is a general feeling of scare. Calls from people who lost their loved ones are surprisingly very few. Organizers say that perhaps the survivors are still in a state of shock even to make a call. There are also calls to seek information on preventive measures or to seek help on treatment. Helplines are mainly located in metros and big cities. Even with the manifold rise in numbers of calls, organizers feel that the number is minuscule compared to the size of the suffering population. Seeking psychological help is still a taboo in our country. People avoid. Rural folk hardly ever reach out, they say. What they say reveals the quiet and hidden part of COVID agony. The quiet part is unrecognized, ignored, pushed under the carpet, not spoken about. It's eating up the minds of individuals, families, silently. Minds scarred, mercilessly pummeled, mutilated, unhinged, in constant quiver with agony, fear. Persons are visible. Living ones are in isolation wards, outside hospitals, begging to be admitted, scrounging for medicines, oxygen, ventilators, beds, ambulances. Struggling to breathe, dead ones too are visible, queuing up to be cremated, or even floating in the Ganga and Yamuna. But minds are invisible. Their suffering is unnoticed, untreated. Their cry is quiet, silent, suppressed. Minds suffer for a lifetime. Psychological wounds don't heal easily. Maybe they won't heal at all. Those unseen scars are unlikely to go away. Those responsible for all this carnage don't seem to care. They seem to think that they don't have to care. They don't care about glaring, visible, physical mayhem. How do we expect them to care about the invisible but ravaged minds? I will stop here today. We'll be back again next Wednesday at lunchtime, 1 o'clock. Stay safe and take good care of yourselves and your loved ones. Until then, bye.